Hey everyone, I hope you're well. This is the story about what if Naruto was neglected and became a Mist Shinobi. Before we start, please subscribe to the channel and like the video as well. So without any further ado, let's start the what if. Naruto had woken up in a forest, very similar to Konoha's, yet very different. The first thing he noticed, no other living thing contained chakra. It was just coming on to dawn. Getting up, he looked around, stretching out, feeling like slept forever, and it felt amazing. All of a sudden, he was shot into his mind. Looking around, he was on a grassy plain, when several beings appeared. The Dragon Council and the Otsutsuki family. "Hello Naruto," Kaguya said, smiling. He nodded. "You have completed your task and we thank you for that. As a reward we give you our chakra, the eternal Mangekyo, as well as the Rinnegan again. You will be this world's sage of 6 paths, you also get 6 paths of your choice as well," she said as her sons nodded. He smiled, "Thank you, farewell." The three faded away, as he looked to the council. "Haku has taken good care of Edolana, like you asked. But now we need your help. The Black Wizard Zeref has run amok for centuries, he will be waking up soon. You are this world hope, we ask your help as well. He has killed his family but has resurrected Natsu, his younger brother, as the strongest demon, to kill him when the time is right. You're in the 777X. We have left our children behind so they can find their own ways, help them and train them, they will need it, for Zeref will wage war on Fiori in the coming years with own forces, among them the Sprygian 12, Igneel stated. He nodded, when Grandina spoke. "Naruto, I ask you to raise my little Wendy please, she is alone in the world and needs a big brother. While Natsu, Gajeel, Sting, Rogue, Laxus, and Cobra have already made to their guilds, Wendy is alone, take care of her please, my heart cries for her being alone when she the love and comfort I cannot provide her anymore." He nodded to her. "I will look for her, since I am able to sense the others," he said, making the sky goddess smile and nod. "Naruto, we the Dragon Council have nothing left to teach you, you are the first true dragon slayer, you must train the other as well, and to be the guardian of Fiori. May the elements burn within you and make us proud, my boy. But beware of one dragon, my younger brother the Dark Dragon King Minasungal, like Zeref wants to see the world burn," Agnologia stated. Naruto nodded to them all and they faded back to their home, while Naruto left as well. Coming back from his mindscape, he began to feel out Wendy's power. It didn't take long, the 3-year-old was feeling sacred and confused. He immediately went for her. Like her dragon slayer brethren, couldn't find her dragon and went searching for. In tears, she felt alone and sacred, as she whimpered along. "Hello, little one." She froze to hear a soft voice behind her. Wiping away her tears, she saw a tall man with auburn hair loom at her with kind eyes and a gentle smile. "Hyo, Mista," she said timidly, with a bit of fear. He knelt down slowly. "Are you okay, sweetie?" She shook her head. "No, I can't find Gwendina, can you help me?" she begged as she started to cry again. He smiled, getting up and coning to her, placing a hand on her head. "I can do one better. Grandina asked me to take care of you, Wendy, and she wanted me to pass along a message saying she was sorry she had to leave, but she could not stay with you any longer, but you will see each other again one day. Till then, be strong and know she loves you dearly," he said to her. Wendy began sobbing as she ran into this stranger, but she didn't care. She missed Grandina terribly. "Do not worry, my dear, all will be well, I will stay with you and protect you," he said to her, hugging her back. Just to clarify, Naruto still has the mechanical left arm and scar over his right eye as well. Laxus will have it on the left and Gildarts will not lose his arm. The toddler fell asleep in his arms. Readjusting her to his back, he made his way out of the forest to a nearby town where he not only realized he had none of this world currency. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a letter to him. "Dear Naruto, we have exchanged all of you Rio with jewels. All the bounties you collected are still there, so you will not have to worry about finances. Good luck, Narukun. Kaguya." He smiled, giving a silent prayer to the mother of chakra as he went to find some food for the pair. Luckily, he had on his new clothing to get rid of the old damaged stuff because it was getting cold. Purple pants, green battle vest, blue high sleeveless collar trench coat, black boots with white bandages on his right arm up to the elbow and one red glove with no face mask on this time, and his eyes were now dark aqua colored. He made his way through town with little Wendy on his back still sleeping. He could hear her light snoring and he chuckled a bit till he found a little cafe-type place. He set her down in a chair gently and then sat in one next to her where she slowly woke up from her nap. Wendy slowly awoke, rubbing her eyes. She saw the man from before smiling at her and she did the same. "Good morning, little Wendy, how are you feeling?" he asked her softly. "Better now, thank you," she said. "Hello you too, can I get you anything?" They both heard a voice and looked over to see a waitress smiling at them. They ordered food and she went to go get it. A few minutes came and went and the food arrived. "Would your daughter like something to drink?" she asked. Wendy went wide-eyed. "Yes, juice please, and I'll have some tea," Naruto said. Wendy looked at him. "Why did you say that?" she asked, curious. "Because I promised Grandina I would take care of you. Well, she said as a big brother, I have no problem adopting you as my daughter. In the long run it would be easier that way. If you want," he said to her. She gasped. He wanted to adopt her. She smiled and nodded. She would love to have a dad. They enjoyed their meal, with Naruto paying for it. They headed out again. "By the way, what is your name?" she asked. "Kale Arisher, your name is now Wendy Arisher," he said to her. She nodded with newfound happiness, making him chuckle. He too felt at peace. They continued on and Kale told her about himself being a dragon slayer like her and that he would train in the coming days. She was excited by this. While on the road they came across a rather big egg, and Kale knew what it was, but Wendy was curious about what it was and they took with them and made camp in a nicer part of the nearby forest. Wendy took care of it and within a couple days it hatched, showing a beautiful white cat with wings and big soft gray/gold eyes. "Ah, you're so pretty," Wendy said in awe. "Who are you?" the cat said, curious, wiggling up to her. Wendy giggled. "I'm Wendy Arisher," she said. The cat nodded. "And your name will be Carla," she said. The cat liked the sound of that and nodded, then yawned and snuggled into Wendy and the two fell asleep. Kale smiled, covering them up as it was gonna get cold tonight. Over the next several years, he took jobs that guilds didn't want, either lowly stuff like babysitting or crazy stuff like 100-year jobs, and were suicide, but Kale got it done. Earning a reputation of one not too cross, but also gained an original as well. What he didn't need in terms of money he gave to orphanages who needed it, renting the old name of the golden-hearted killer. Wendy also excelled in her training. She was quite powerful and had a bubbly nature, not shy or timid. But all knew not to screw with her or Carla lest they incur Kale's wrath, like the Dark Guild Eisenborg discovered when they kidnapped Wendy so they could have their own dragon slayer. The guild was erased from existence. Today we find the trio on a job for a town that constantly rains, so they go to find the source. They see a park with a girl with pale skin, blue hair and an emotionless face, but it held much pain and sadness. Walking closer they could the women speak. Drip, drip, another day of loneliness, drip. The trio came up. "Hello miss, are you by chance the one making all this rain?" Kale asked, nicely. She looked up at this man who smiled at her gently. It took her back as she wasn't used to this. Looking down she saw an 8-year-old girl smiling as well and a cat with wings looking nervous. "Drip, drip. Are you here to fight me too?" she asked monotoned. The voice reminded him of Conan a bit. "Fight no, talk yes, you look like you could use some company," he said as made the snake sign and a wooden umbrella appeared over then with 3 chairs for the trio to sit. The women gasped, as her eyes became big. This was new to her and she hadn't expected it, but it did feel nice to be out of the rain for a bit. Introductions: my name is Kale Arisher, and these are my daughters, Wendy and Carla Arisher, he said to her with a friendly smile. Wendy waved excitedly. "Hello, I'm Wendy, you seem like a nice person." "Hello miss, I apologize for her, she likes meeting new people. I am Carla," the exceed said, hoping not to offend. The woman was taken back by this. No one had ever wanted to speak to her, not even her own parents. She broke from her thoughts to speak. "Hello, I am Juvia, it is nice to meet you too," she said, unsure about it. Kale nodded to her. "Now I'm guessing others had made it no to try to stop you from making all this rain. but unlike others I have no interest in fighting you, you seem like a nice person, so we thought we could talk instead, he said to her as he pulled out tea from nowhere. She looked at him, not really trusting him, but he hadn't made her feel uncomfortable, plus they hadn't made an attempt to attack her, so she relented a bit. They began talking, just about whatever at first, to make her more comfortable and easier to work with. Juvia soon realized he was the golden-hearted killer, and she was amazed by this man before her, but also loved the two girls as well. Wendy reminded her of her as a child, and Carla looked to have a good head on her shoulders. It made her feel good to have someone to talk to. She felt relaxed, and before they knew it the rain had stopped, and Juvia smiled for the first time. "Oh wow, you have such a beautiful smile, Juvia-chan." Wendy beamed. She blushed a bit, but was a nice thing to hear. Kale smiled and chuckled at his oldest. She had that way about her. He ruffled her hair a bit, making groan, "Dad," she whined, fixing it. Juvia began laughing. It was both funny and cute. "Juvia, if you have nowhere to go, you can come with us till you find something you want to do," Kale stated. She gasped, "Do you mean that?" "Kale-sama," she said, not thinking. He nodded, "Yes, your company would be welcomed and appreciated, but no Sama please," he said. She nodded. She had nowhere to go, and she had just made her first friends with this family. She took the chance. "Good, the rain has stopped, so let's get paid and get food, my treat," he said. The girls cheered while Juvia nodded. The four got up and headed to the mayor's office. With him being most grateful, gave a bonus as well, which Kale gave Juvia 10% of and the orphanage the rest. They found a nice tavern to eat at and sat in the corner where they wouldn't be bothered by the others. "To a successful mission done, and to our new friend Juvia," Kale said, toasting. Eating, talking, and laughing the entire time till they heard a commotion near the bar. Kale looked over and saw what appeared to be dark wizards speaking to the barkeep. "We heard there was an elemental mage here that uses water. Where are they?" "Left today." She was met by a man who convinced her to stop the raining, and that was that, the old man said. No liking the answer, he grabbed a bar stool and smashed it on the table, breaking it. "Does anyone know where the water bitch is?" "Talk or death," he said loudly. His other goons just snickered. Kale was now pissed. Juvia was shaking. She didn't want to join a dark guild. They hurt people. Wendy and Carla hugged her, also afraid. He looked at his girls and saw the fear, with Wendy whimpering. Pulling up his black face mask, he stood up. "Stay here, you three, I'll be back," he said gently. "Is there a reason you morons are harassing the good people here?" Kale asked, now quite annoyed. The dark mages looked at the newcomer. He looked pretty intimidating, but they were not going to allow this guy to show them up. "Who are you, and do you not know who we are?" the leader sneered. Kale raised an eyebrow. "Nope, never heard of you. All I know is you're dark mages, and you all have ruined my night with my girls, and I am not happy. Now you all suffer." Kale vanished, and with the blink of an eye, and each of the 7 mages were taken down in one move. Kale came back to his original spot. With a crack of the neck, he heard clapping and looked back, seeing Wendy. He bowed in a silly way for her and pulled out a couple jewel to give to the barkeep for the chair, and he sat back down as they went back to their meal. But for Juvia, time had stopped. She looked at his man with shock. He took 7 dark mages, but spoke to her like a gentleman. "You don't need to be afraid. I'm only like that when people who are precious to me, you included Juvia-chan," he said. He went back to eating as Wendy was reenacting the fight, while Carla sighed. Juvia looked down, smiling at her food. This was so much different than what she was used to, but she had to admit she liked it. They were her friends now. Natsu, Dragneel and Happy were heading to Harjan Port looking for Igneel, but also found out there was a man impersonating his nickname, the Salamander. This did not sit well with him and made his way to find him. "Man, Happy. I'm hungry, are you?" Natsu asked. The blue exceed nodded, and the two began to look for a good tavern to eat at. When they ran into a blonde who was grumbling about pervy old men and theft. At the same time, Kale and the girls had come into port to turn in a bounty. It had been several years since they met Juvia and had come to love her time with them. Her personality changed and became much better. She had a personality mixed of Wendy and Carla, Her style has a battle dress with shorts under and special mesh shirt made for her by Kale, deciding on short hair in case a fight breaks out. We see the four, making their way to the bounty office where they deliver there the bodies of several dark mages and collecting the money, which was a pretty big payoff. Leaving, they saw several people make a scene, so they went to see what was going on. "I'm the mighty salamander," this tall guy with brown hair and a smug grin said. Natsu scowled, this just an imposter, and he was not happy about his name being stolen, while several of the girls gushed and swooned, as did the blonde girl, who we now know as Lucy Heartfilia, one of the last of the celestial mages around. Who wasn't all that impressed, but thought he looked cute. "No, you're not. Your name is Bora and you were a member of the Dark Guild Titan's Nose," Kale said, walking up. Everyone looked over to see the auburn-haired man walk up to the fakers. A couple of the guys gasped in surprise as the one in question, as his eyes went wide. "How did you know that?" "Only we know that," one of his goons said, earning a smack upside the head, but by then they all knew and began walking away. But Bora was pissed and wanted retribution. "Now that you know my secret, we can't let you live." Natsu was ready for a fight but was stopped. "Natsu Dragneel, son of Igneel, cease your power. The port guard are on their way," Kale said. Natsu looked at him with confusion as Happy tilted his head, narrowing his eyes, but before he could ask, the guard came to stop the ensuing fight before it started. While Natsu and Lucy watched Kale speak to the head guard, and they were both had questions for this strange man. Happy was speaking to Carla and trying to ask her on a date with him, much to Wendy's amusement. "How do you know about Igneel?" Natsu demanded. Kale sat across from Natsu, Happy and Lucy, who wanted to join Fairy Tail. Wendy, Carla and Juvia sat next to Kale, with Juvia on his right and the girls on his left. And they were glaring at Natsu, cause he was being rude. "I met him many years ago, he along with Grendina, Wyslogia, Skyadram, Lucian, Metalicana and my master Agnologia, who taught me the ways of the Dragon Slayer. I am the first Slayer," he said. Natsu went wide-eyed. "You're the one he helped train?" he said in shock. He basically yelled. Kale nodded. "Yes, and I gave promise to all to train each of you in your respective Slayer powers. But he also made me promise not to tell you where he went. He will come back to speak to you soon," Kale said. Natsu, who nodded dumbfounded, but wanted to know more. "But let it go for now." "Wait, you're the bounty hunter, right?" Lucy asked. He nodded. "These are my daughters Wendy, child of Grendina, Carla and my dear friend Juvia," he said to them, wrapping them in his arms, making Juvia blush. "I'm Lucy Heartfilia." "I'm Happy. Natsu Dragneel from Fairy Tail." They began talking after introductions, when Natsu asked them all, "Are you guys part of a guild?" They all shook their heads. "No, we're part of no guild, never really thought about it," Juvia stated, finishing her food. "Why don't you join us?" Natsu asked. The idea of more friends was cool to him. They all looked at each other for a moment, a silent conversation being, and they nodded to each other. "Sure, we'll go with you, not like we have anything better to do and I still have to train you, Natsu," Kale said. They all nodded and agreed to it and headed out. Natsu was excited about that fact, so the sooner they got home the better. All the while everyone was getting acquainted with each other. The trip home took less time than to get to the port city. Once they made it to Fiore, it was much calmer than many of the other places. Wendy, Carla and Lucy were in awe of this place. Juvia was just smiling along, walking next Kale, enjoying the sights. While Kale just smiled at his little family, but there was one piece missing. His Edolana. The more he thought about it, the more he realized maybe she could come be here with him. But his thoughts were interrupted when Natsu spoke up. "We're here, welcome to Fairy Tail," he said as he and Happy went inside, kicking the doors open. "We're back," he shouted. Soon enough the others came hiding behind Kale, who chuckled a bit as they made their way in, seeing people talk, laugh, one girl drinking a barrel of ale, one guy painting, and both Natsu and a half-naked guy being tossed into the wall. They made it up to the bar where a lovely woman in a black and white dress was tending the bar. She had rather friendly smile on her face as she saw 5 new people coming up. Why hello there, welcome to Fairy Tale, my name is Mira Jane Steris, how can I help you, she asked. Well, we're all here to join your quite lovely guild if you don't mind. Kale said in a friendly tone. She nodded, happy to have new members. Of course, let me just get your names first, she said. Juvies Loxer. Lucy Hartfilia. Wendy Marvel Erisher. Carla Erisher. Kale Erisher. The last one made her eyes go wide as the rest of the guild did, stopping to stare at him. Kale Erisher, the Golden Heart Killer, she said with a mild stutter. He nodded to her with an eye smile. He had already expected this, so it didn't bother him. Fight me. They turned to see Natsu up and ready to go. So you're the Golden Heart Killer, you're not what I expected, to say the least. They turned to see a much older man as tall as Wendy walking down the stairs. Sir Makarov Dreyer, it is my honor to meet you. Kale said, bowing. Makarov came down, hearing everything and wanting to meet them all in person. The guild was quite all attention on the pair. The tension was now apparent, which made both Wendy and Juvia nervous. I have but one question, why did you erase that dark guild from existence? The old guild master asked. Simple, they stole my little Wendy with the goal of turning her into a weapon. If there is one thing I won't tolerate is harm coming to my family, because family is the most precious thing we have, said as petted both girls' heads, causing them to blush and smile. All of them were quite surprised by the answer, but were impressed nonetheless. Seeing the answer he wanted, Makarov smiled, then welcome to Fairy Tale, he said, causing the guild to smile and cheer. Mira Jane nodded, grabbing the stamp as she asked where to put the logo on. Lucy took hers on the right hand. Juvia took hers on the left arm. Wendy took hers in the right arm. Carla took hers on the shoulder. Kale took his on the front of his neck. We have new members of Fairy Tale, time to celebrate, Makarov said to his children. The party was underway, with many coming up to get to know the new members. Kale smiled, seeing his girls and Juvia speak with their new guild and get comfortable with them. But now that was over, he had to find something out. He got up off the chair he was sitting on, took out a blade and cut his thumb and made the appropriate hand signs, slamming his hands down. Kukius no Jutsu. The celebration died down, all eyes on Kale. As the smoke died down, they saw a beautiful looking cat. She had ocean blue, sea green and purple in coat with lemon yellow eyes. She looked around. What where I am? She asked. Anna? She froze. She hadn't heard that voice in years. She turned to see him. She gasped as tears hit her eyes. Papa? He smiled under his mask. He had not expected it to work, and yet it did. Papa, she yelled, running to him as he caught her, and she cried. Many were confused by this, while happy at the same. It's so good to see you again, darling, he said, kissing the top of her head as her cat ears twitched happily. Oh Papa, I missed you so much, it hurt so badly when you died, she said, hugging him. What is going on? Mira asked, confused. Kale looked them all and spoke. Edolana here is the first child I took care of. Her parents were killed many years prior, so I raised her myself, he said. They nodded, expecting him to go on, which he did. My original name was Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, and I am the first dragon slayer. I don't come from this world, I come from another where chakra, not magic, is the main source of power. I found a scroll which I'm sure wasn't a part of my world, contained the dragons as summons similar to familiars. Where I met the dragon council, those like Igneel, Metallicana and Agnologia, who trained me in the ways of the dragon. I had been killed by a group of Rouge ninja hellbent on world domination. To save my little sister and my world, I tapped into that power, but it proved too much for my body. When I died, I thought I had to leave my Anna here behind, but I see I didn't have to, and she is not a cat, she is a dragon, he explained, nodding to her. She got down and transformed into her original form, shocking everyone there. She changed back into her cat form, standing next to Kale. Makarov knew he wasn't lying, but was surprised by his story. Well, I see no problem with it, and we gain a new family member, he said. Kale smiled as Mira came, stamping her as well. Wendy and Carla came up to Anna. Hi, I'm Wendy. Hello, I am Carla. Anna smiled. Are you two my sisters? She asked. The two nodded and hugged them both. It shocked them at first, but then hugged back, happy to have another sister. Kale smiled. This was much different from lonely years prior after the Jonin exams. Here it was a new start and no one knew his old identity. Here he could start over. I'm rather impressed, my boy. You're not what I expected at all, Makarov said. I had a choice. Become the monster you hate or the monster they hate. I will kill only if my family or friends are in danger. Beyond that I prefer to use less brutal methods, he said to the old man. Makarov nodded. I'm glad you feel that way. Fairy Tail is a family. We have kept that belief alive since the time of Mavis Vermilion, the first master, who believed that true strength comes from love and family and your ability to hold true to your conviction, he said. Kale nodded, watching Anna make new friends with the guild. My adopted younger sister told me something similar and I kept true to that, saying that true strength can only be achieved when you have someone or something precious to protect. It is then we can overcome any obstacle in our path, he replied. Makarov nodded with a small smile. He liked this boy more. All of a sudden Jet ran inside in total fear. She's here, dear God, she is here, he yelled frantically. The others began frantically cleaning up. Some were crying, others were hyperventilating. Meanwhile the new girls along were now kinda scared. Who does she mean? Wendy said, now shaking. Kale just petted her head. I'm sure people are just over-exaggerating. Besides, nothing will happen while I am here. Trust me, he said, giving her a nice smile. All 5 girls felt better till the front doors were slammed open, scaring them all minus Makarov, Mira and Kale, while the 5 hid behind Kale, who got a good look at the one the guild fears. She had blood-red hair like his mother Kushina, chocolate-colored eyes, although one seemed off. She wore armor-plated vest and gauntlets, but had on a skirt with boots. She looked rather pretty, to say the least. Hello again, master, I am here, she said in a proper tone of voice. He nodded, happy to have her back. As she made her way to the bar where she put her trophy down at. Hello again, Mira, she said with a smile. Hello Urza, Mira said back with a smile. Urza looked over at the 6 new people in the corner. She liked meeting new people. Hello there, are you all new members of the guild? She asked in a calm voice. They all looked at her and nodded. I'm Lucy Hartfilia. I'm Juvia Loxer. I'm Wendy Marvel Erisher. Hello, I'm Carla Erisher. Pleasure to meet you, I am Edolana Erisher. I am Kale Erisher, the last one said. Her eyes narrowed on him. She knew of him, but was surprised he was there and a member of the guild. Urza Scarlet, pleasure, she said, shaking Kale's hand. It was then she spun her head around. It had been too quiet looking around for the 2 troublemakers. She laid her eyes upon them. They had arms on over their shoulders, sweating profusely. I see you two are getting along nicely, she genuinely happy. You know, think this place is gonna be great. What do you think? He asked the girls. I love it here. Lucy exclaimed. Me too, plus that gray is kinda cute, for a streaker, she said with a chuckle. We like it here, too, all 3 girls said at the same time. He nodded when the door opened to show 4 people walking in. The first was tall as him, blonde spiky hair with a black muscle shirt, maroon pants, black boots, with a purple coat. Second was shorter with long green hair that spiked up atop in thunderbolt shaped. He held himself as the quiet, loyal type with a dark red coat, with a sword strapped to his waist, white frilly dress shirt and black pants with white boots. Third was a female in a green/blue dress and black boots, her brown hair flowing in the wind. Pushing up her glasses, with a smirk on her face. The last one was the tallest. He wore a blue muscle shirt, with a blue kilt, black pants and boots, with blue and brown cape with a helmet and visor on. They were the Thunder Legion led by Makarov's grandson Laxus Dryer. Everyone tensed up seeing them here, except for Makarov. Something you need, Laxus? Makarov asked. He shook his head, walking past to go upstairs to grab a mission. Kale on the other hand just watched on, seeing the tension in the room, but let it go as he no part of it. When the girls came up to him he picked them all up, putting both cats on his shoulders and Wendy on his back. Making them all giggle. The Thunder Trio looked over at the new meat and were quite surprised to say the least. Many were smiling at the family, especially the girls, a few blushing at the father of three. "So who are the new losers?" the voice of Laxus said. He had walked back down the stair, seeing 6 new people. Kale was a man who gave anybody a chance, but there were a few times when he knew he would not like somebody, and right now his nerves were being tested. These are the new guild members: Lucy Hartfilia, Juvia Loxer, Wendy, Carla and Edolana Erisher, and their father Kale Erisher, Urza stated. This surprised them as they knew of his reputation. They don't know he erased He Dark Guild off the map. Laxus though stared down Kale, their eyes met, like they were having a silent conversation. Laxus clicked his teeth. "When I take over this guild, many things will change. First we're getting rid of the weaklings in here," he sneered, letting loose some killing intent. Kale said nothing at first till his girls as well as Juvia and Lucy started shaking with his little ones whimpering, unable to handle it. This sent him over the edge. He released his Dragon Force aura back at the team 10 times greater, equalizing the room. "Listen well, Dryer, you are far from ready to lead this guild, especially with that attitude, maybe one day. But know this, try a stunt like that again and I will whoop your ass across all of Fiori. No one threatens my babies and gets away scot-free." His eyes began glowing as the rainbow spectrum showed around him. To get his point across. The 3 became a tad bit nervous. This was new to them, but Evergreen blushed a bit seeing the new guy. Laxus clicked his teeth and they all left, shutting the doors. Many looked at him in awe. No one ever stood up to Laxus before. It was incredible. The girls hugged him, thankful it as over, when heard 2 voice speak. "Oi, Kale, fight me. I want to fight you." He looked at both Urza and Natsu Amni, of whose side at the Fire Dragon Slayer, but were surprised about Urza. He looked them both. One was pumped up ready to go while the other, you could see it in her eyes. He smirked under his mask. "Okay." Kale smirked under his mask as he walked out behind the guild where the training grounds were. One side you had Urza and Natsu, eager and ready to fight. The other Kale Erisher, the Golden Heart Killer. "Remember, no killing or maiming, only knockouts," Makarov stated. The 3 nodded and the fight began as the rest of the guild stood off to the sides to watch. Many stood with anticipation. Urza looked at Natsu, who began powering up. She did the same, requipping into different armor, whitish gold armor with wings on her back. Kale pulled out his special-made short swords as he began channeling his power into them. Heaven's wheel. Urza's swords flew at Kale at blistering speeds, but he saw them all, raising his arms and began blocking them all without fail. The sounds of metal on metal were heard and sparks were seen coming off the blades. Once done, Urza charged in with her sword and the 2 looked like they were dancing. If one parried the other strike, they moved with grace and speed. It was amazing. The guild went wide-eyed seeing Kale block all of Urza's swords. Now they watched a literal dance between the 2. Urza was impressed to say the least, her smile never leaving her face. She had found a new weapons partner. Breaking away for a minute. "Your skill is amazing, never have I seen such skill before. Would you become my sparring partner from now on?" she asked. He looked at her. "I would be honored, my lady. I have enjoyed this bout," he said. She was taken off guard by his statement, blushing by his gentleman-like attitude. She looked back to see him putting his weapons away as he made 3 hand signs. Would release, for wall prison. Making the snake sign, he channeled his chakra as the trees came alive, putting Urza into a cage, shocking everyone except for Idaloana. "Go Papa," she said, so excited, she loved watching him. Urza gasped as she was encased in the wooden cage and was not able to break out of it. "Hang out for a moment, we'll continue our fight after I face Natsu," he said. Said Dragon Slayer smirked. "Okay, I'm all fired up now," he shouted. Kale powered up as well, knowing what he was gonna do. While Natsu's fire aura began showing, Kale showed his rainbow power. The others were in awe of this. 2 Dragon Slayers were gearing to attack, each taking in big breaths. Fire Dragon's Roar. Rainbow Dragon's Roar. They shouted out as intense beams of power came from their mouths and hit each other, creating an insane shockwave that hit everyone and sent them to their butts. "Whoa, what power!" Levi stated with stars in her eyes. "You're right, but Kale is just insane. I think he is even more powerful than Gildarts and Master," Miku said. When the smoke cleared, Kale was gone, making everyone look in all directions. Secret Tekuhike, 1000 Years of Death. Kale came up from the ground behind Natsu with his hands in a prayer-like fashion with both pointer fingers up. The others freaked out hearing his next Tekuhike, but soon changed their tunes at what was next. Kale rammed both fingers right up the backside door of one Natsu Dragneel and he went flying away into the forest. His face contorted into a silent scream before he yelled, "What the hell, Lel?" He vanished from sight, as everyone else turned to the new member of the guild as he gave an eye smile. "Been wanting to use that for a while now," he said with a chuckle. The others were speechless, till the little girls began rolling on the ground dying from laughing. That was a genius move on his part, followed by Gray, Juvia and Lucy as well. Soon the rest of the guild were now in tears. They were not going to let Natsu live that down anytime soon. Urza wiped away a couple tears from her eyes before speaking. "That was quite a Tekuhike. Did you make that yourself?" she asked. He looked at her. "Actually yes, I was bored one day and was thinking up new pranks for myself," he said. The cage soon broke apart, allowing Urza to come out. She no longer wanted to fight, so she would be okay now. Looking at the bushes, they saw a pissed Natsu charge at Kale, but was stopped by one hit from said man, knocking him out. Kale just chuckled. He knew the younger Dragon Slayer would want retribution, but for now he could sleep it off. The guild went into a frenzy of cheering and amazement at his power. No one could believe it at all. They had gone back into the building to celebrate. Suddenly the door was thrown open as Biska and Alzak came running, with Biska hysterical in tears. "Someone help, Maze isn't breathing, please someone save my little girl," she begged. The guild went quite with worry. A member of the family had been hurt. Kale wasted no time and went into doctor mode. "Set her on the table, I need to scan her." They nodded, setting her down as the guild watched with bated anticipation. They saw his hand glow and he moved it over the 6-month-old. "She has been poisoned, give me a few minutes." Everyone gasped in horror, while those like Gray and Elfman gritted their teeth in anger. Babies were off limits. He placed his hand on her stomach and kept it there. The baby went from pale blue and near death's door to gaining her color back, and finally she gasped for breath, threw up onto the floor and cried. Biska picked her up and cried thankful. Alzak kissed his little girl, crying as well. The guild gave shocked looks again as Kale began hacking and coughing, pulling down his mask and threw up the poison, which looked like black blood. Once done, he took a few breaths, his stomach settled. Laying against the wall, he took slow deep breaths. Wendy, Carla and Edolana ran up to him worried. "Daddy, are you okay?" He smiled at them and nodded. "Yeah, he okay now. Could one of you bring me and Maze some water, please?" he asked. Wendy rushed to the bar while everyone else looked on in shock. "What was that?" Urza asked, concerned. "That was called witch's brew. Depending on the person, it can cause slow, agonizing death, or in Maze's case causes the body to slowly shut down and suffocate. I simply pulled most it from her pores on her skin, and she threw up the rest. She will he okay now, lots of water and a day's bed rest, she will he good as new," he said aloud. Biska looked at him in tears as she hugged her now sleeping baby. Thank you so much," she said sincerely, trying not to break down. He nodded to her as Wendy brought a pitcher of water, which he drank the whole thing. Slowly he got up and made his way to the family. As he saw Maze drinking water from a bottle, she looked up and saw the softest, kindest eyes ever, and she gave a small smile before getting sleepy. He kissed the top of her head as he looked at both parents. "Thanks, Kale. I don't know what we would have done if we lost her," Alzak said, his eyes watering. "I know, I would he lost any of my girls as well, but I do have to ask, where did she get the poison from?" Alzak thought back and then it clicked. "We have stopped off at a local cafe before coming here. We got her some juice and it looked fine, smelled like apples and grapes. She stopped breathing as soon as we got here, he said. Did you see the server who gave it to you? He asked. Yeah, he was tall, had dark brown hair, and had a strange-looking tattoo on his neck. It wasn't a guild mark either, Biska said, frowning. Show me the mark. Alzak drew the mark and Kale's eyes went wide, then glowed in anger. You know this mark? He asked. Yes, this is the mark of the Dark Guild Bounties Hunters, the commandment. They target light guilds, for a hefty fee will kill all they need to. They tired getting me to join, then I refused. They kidnapped Juvia and the girls with the treat of killing them as incentive, so I erased 5 of their offices and told them in no nice terms if they continued to hound me, they wouldn't live to regret it, he said. This shocked them all and made them all angry. They hated people like that, but all thoughts broke when Maze woke up and looked at Kale and she cooed at him as if to say thank you. The guild was all smiles at this moment and Makarov was both pleased and proud to see this. You're quite welcome, darling, he said, tickling her love rolls, making her giggle. Many ladies blushed seeing this. It still shocked them. This man was both powerful and dangerous and yet kind and caring. Kale pulled a piece of paper for the new parents. This is a seal. If you ever need my help, just hold it in your hand and flare a bit of magic and I'll be there in a flash, he said to them. They nodded and graciously took it. Well, who's hungry? 'Cause I sure am. Cheering was heard and he went into the kitchen and began whipping up a feast, much to the guild's shock, minus Juvia and the girls. The guild was alive with talking, laughing, and happiness all around. He even made his special baby formula for Maze, much to Biska and Alzak's appreciation. Meanwhile, Urza, Mira, and the girls were at the bar eating the food. This is delicious. He can heal, fight, cook, and is a great father. What else can he do? Urza said dreamily. Who wants desserts? He yelled out. Urza shot up. You can make dessert? She said, shocked. Giving her a nice smile, he nodded and began whipping up everything, including cheesecake in 10 different varieties. Urza looked them all and began crying tears of joy. It was a thing of beauty. Papa is just the best. He is my hero. Anna said, munching on food. Mine too. He means the world to me. I don't know what my life would be like without him. Wendy said with big smile. Carla nodded as well, enjoying the food. The others heard and smiled, especially Lucy, Urza and Mira, looking back seeing Kale wearing an apron that says "Number 1 Dad" on it. The guild was immensely proud to have the golden-hearted killer in their family. Soon all of Mongolia would come to love him as well, and this was how the former Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze WSS introduced to Fairy Tail. In the days after saving the baby of Fairy Tail, things became fairly quiet for the most part. Kale found a rather nice home near the guild for him and the girls, while Juvia and Lucy moved into the apartment dorms several blocks away. Today we see Kale looking at job posting. While he could it all, he chose easy stuff for now. Babysitting, cleaning out animals from town, stopping Dark Guild from terrorizing town. Hello. He saw the last one and took it. While only 1,500,000 jewel, it was good enough for him. He grabbed the piece of paper and went to Makarov. When he was stopped and looked at the guild for a moment, he saw a brown-haired girl at the bar looking sad. She was not drinking like she normally does, and he knew something was off, so he went to speak to her. Kana was depressed. It was the 10th anniversary of her mother's death, and it still hurt, and she still hadn't told her father she was his daughter. Hey, you! She looked over startled, wiping away her tears. She saw Kale there looking at her. Oh hey, what's up? She asked, trying to play it off. Don't do that, I know you're hurting, so what is wrong? He asked, sitting at the table for a moment. She went wide-eyed. That obvious, huh? She asked. He said nothing, but gave her all his attention for the moment. It's the 10th anniversary of my mom's death, and I haven't been able to tell Gildarts he is my father. And I just feel bleh today, she said sadly. He nodded a bit to her. Well then, how about you join me on my job, give you a chance to release all the pent-up tension on some dark wizards, he said. She looked back at him in surprise, but he spoke to her again. You're lucky. My mother and father abandoned me when I was 5. For my younger sister, they looked at me like I was simply an inconvenience they didn't want around. Then I met my adopted mother and for 5 years things were okay for me, then she met her husband and stepdaughter and soon enough she turned her back on me as well. I had given up by that point. It was Edilana who saved me from myself. When then old man comes home you should tell him, he said to her. She felt so sad for him hearing that, but what if he doesn't want me, she asked shyly. No. When a good man has lost everything and has the opportunity to have some good in his life he takes and never lets go, give him that chance, and you both might get more than you ever hoped for, he said. Kana looked at him with hope and nodded. She agreed to go with him and they saw Mira at the bar. Hey Mira, we got a job, we should be back in about 4 days' time, can you look after the girls till then? He asked. Mira nodded approving the job. Kale looked down at his babies along with little Maze who were sleeping in a booth nearby that was reserved for babies and children. He pulled out a blanket and covered them up, kissing their heads. Kana and Mira looked on with smiles, watching made them feel so good. He had a knack for being a great father. They were blushing at the scene. All had been nice till lo and behold the doors slammed open and both Gray and Natsu were arguing about something while Juvia and Lucy walked behind them sighing. No way Ice Princess, that job was total cake. You flame brain, it took us longer to finish because you had to take on those dark wizards. Both boys were shouting and glaring at each other, when Elfman stood up and shouted, only real men talk with your fists. A fight had now broken out and things were being thrown around. Out of nowhere a chair came speeding into the booth where the girls were sleeping. Kale had sensed it and looked back catching it with one hand causing a leg to shatter and splinter into his hand with several of the larger ones sticking out of his hand, blood dripping out of his hand. Biska, Kana, Juvia, Lucy and Mira gasped as they came rushing over to check on the girls and then him. Kale was now furious, as he pulled out the splinters, spurting a bit of blood on the ground, dropping them on the ground. As the others who weren't fighting had horrified looks seeing Kale's hand bleeding as his eyes glowed angrily. Kale, are you okay? Kana asked in concern, seeing all that blood. He looked at the ladies and nodded, yes, but they won't be, he said making his way to them. The others keep their distance. The dark aura around him made the others become scared. Without warning he made a grab for the trio who started the fight and took them outside. Soon enough Kale came back in happy and satisfied again, while the other three came back in looking pure white and terrified out of their minds. What did you do them? Mira asked. Made them apologize and told them to be more conscious of their surroundings, he said like nothing happened. They noticed his hand was still bloody, so they went to treat him cleaning the splinter holes and stopping the blood. The girls fretted over the nut he paid no mind, the children were safe and that is all that mattered. He looked over and saw his little jewels asleep. He smiled under his mask, still sleeping like nothing had happened with Edilana slightly drooling, making him chuckle. He turned to look at Mira to speak then looked at his partner for the job. Well Kana and I will be off for this job here, see you in a few and tell the girls not to worry, he said. He then looked back at the guild, let it be known, if my children, Maze or Romeo has been hurt by any more nonsense inside the guild. Let's just say I can make sunsets look traumatizing, his voice held an amused growl. As the others nodded while the regular troublemakers paled again. Mira nodded with a smile and off they went. Such a good man, hard to believe he is a cold-blooded killer, she said to herself. Only too evil. She looked back to see Makarov looking on with a happy gleam in his eyes. Watching the door close, then looking at the sleeping kids. This is what fairy tale is. The duo were walking through Magnolia as the townsfolk saw the pair. Kana looked like she normally did, with her black basam bra on with her green capris and black strappy open-toed shoes. Kale had on a blue battle vest, green pants with blue boots, and a black sleeveless battle coat with a white lining on the edges and the inside that went to his shins with a red face mask and gloves. He looked intimidating, being about 6'4", 6'5". Moat wouldn't think to want to start trouble with him. Kana felt safe being around him like she felt with Gildarts. I figured you could be lead on this one because I am the new guy, he said to her. She nodded to him as they made their way to the train station. So the town we are looking for is 3 stops away. Dark guilds have always been a problem, so we have to try to negotiate with them to leave or remove them by force. Kana explained. Kale nodded, and as they got tickets and waited sitting near the platform. Why did that dark guild steal Wendy? Kana asked. He looked at her. Because Phantom Lord and Oration Cease each have a dragon slayers in their guilds, so they figured they get one as well. They kidnapped my Wendy while I was on a job. I had only left her and Carla for a few hours, but they knew the hotel I had them at. When I discovered who had her, it had been 3 full days, and confronted them. The trash had the nerve to call Wendy a thing, and I found her in a bad way. They had starved her and beat her to break her. If I hadn't found her, she would be dead. So I made sure they would live to regret their choice. No one fucks with my family and lives, he explained. Kana was horrified, and saw the monster behind his eyes and felt real fear, but he soon calmed down and she relaxed a bit, glad he was a friend not an enemy. The train finally came and they got on. The pair found their own little area in the back and relaxed. The train began moving and she saw did sick like Natsu or Laxus does. I am the first Slayer, the prototype. I don't have those issues. And the problems I originally had no longer exist, so I am good to go, he said. Kana chuckled, taking a drink of water from her flask. They laid back and enjoyed the ride. Kana glanced at him as his eyes were closed. She looked at his demeanor, calm and focused. Plus those muscles. She blushed. He was major eye candy indeed, and she liked him. She bit her lower lip, shaking those thoughts. They had a job to do, though the pink dusting her cheeks never left. The train finally stopped and the pair got off to something much worse, a ghost town. They kept walking into it. Kale's blood boiled. People living on the streets, dying or dead, children crying and hopelessness in the air. Kale felt a tug in his pants leg, and a boy no older than 3. He looked lime. He hadn't eaten in a few days. HWP please, he said softly. Kale knelt down, looked into his eyes, and nodded. Where is the Dark Guild hurting this town? He asked. The mother of the boy pointed to the center of town. Are you here to help us? She asked, a glint of hope in her eyes. He nodded. I am going to erase the guild from this place and free this town. You have my word, he said to her. For what seemed like first time in forever, she smiled as tears fell from her eyes. Many heard as well and cheered for the saviors. He then pulled out a scroll and opened it up, revealing a treasure trove of food for the people. He made 3 clones to distribute the food to the whole town. Marking the people, go wide-eyed. Line up in an orderly fashion and my clones will give you food. Do not fight, do not cause trouble. There is enough food here for everyone, he said to them. He looked at Kana and spoke, let's go, we have trash to clean out. The Dark Guild Terra Incognito had this town in the grips. But all that changed when the doors were broken off the hinges and 2 people stepped inside. Kale and Kana looked inside to see the hall was decorated like a palace. Many of the dark wizards were now on edge seeing these 2 newcomers waltz into their home. You made a grave mistake coming here. We are the Dark Guild Terra Incognito. Now you will suffer our wrath, said one who walked up to the pair. He looked about Kale's height, but had more muscle than him, but gave off an air of arrogance and pretentiousness. So they figured he was the leader. Kale cracked his neck and began without a warning. Rainbow Dragon's Roar. He shot out a powerful blast at the leader as well as those in his way, eviscerating them, leaving the others shocked as they went into full battle mode. Kana pulled out her cards and got to work taking stragglers who got in her way, while Kale took on the bulk of the guild. Meanwhile, the people outside watched and ate, enjoying the hall getting wrecked to hell, fireworks going off at the same time. Back inside, Kale had finished off the goons and went to look for prisoners or hostages and the such. While Kana looked around, she found a locked door and broke in to find money and riches inside. Kale went down to the dungeon area and found prisoners, men, women and children. Breaking the locks, he freed them all and they made their way out of the hell. Once done, Kana distributed the wealth to the whole town while Kale toppled down the guild hall, erasing the mark of Terra Incognito forever. Newly elected mayor gave thanks to the wizards, but Kale turned down the reward, saying to give it to the orphanage instead, while Kana took only 5% of her share, giving the rest back to the town. The pair bid the town goodbye and they headed back home, 2 days shy of his original 4-day return. Kana probably was the most impressed, seeing the man who destroyed the whole guild single-handed, give his share to the orphans. She smiled. She likes that he was so kind and thoughtful like that. Back on the train, Kana looked at her partner. Is that why you earned the name, the Golden Heart Killer? He nodded. Money means little to me in terms of material terms. I keep enough to keep me and the girls comfortable, and that is all. The orphans need it more than me and I have no qualms letting them have it. The bigger reward is showing them all it takes is one kind act, and you have made the biggest impact, he said. She nodded to him, thinking on it. She hoped Gildarts felt the same, only time would tell. They made it back to the guild in record time and he opened the doors for Kana like a true gentleman, making her smile at him. We're back! Kana shouted, heading to the bar for a drink. Kale was ambushed by 3 little girls who giggled, glad he was back. Dad! He fell back laughing with them on top, hugging them. Hello my little bugs, did you miss me? He teased. Mira, Urza, Kana, Lucy and Juvia all smiled at him when the sirens went off and the guild began to panic, except for Mira, Urza and Makarov. Oh no, he has come home. The newbies minus Kale became worried. What is going on? Lucy asked. It seems Gildarts has returned from his 100-year mission, Master said to them calmly. Kale nodded as they waited with Juvia and Lucy hiding behind him as the girls curled up on his lap. He chuckled a bit and waited as the doors came open, revealing the man himself. He had on a dark gray shirt, black pants with dark gray boots, and a black cloak, his brown hair brushed back and the stubble on his chin needing a shave. He smiled. Hey old man, I'm back. Mission was a success. Makarov nodded, happy to see him back. Fight me, Gil. Natsu charged at him only to be smacked into a wall. He made his way to the bar to get a drink when he met the newbies. Hey, who are all you? He asked Kale and the others. They introduced themselves one by one to him, petting the little girls' heads, till Kale. Kale Arisher. Gildarts narrowed his eyes for a moment in shock, but soon smiled at him, reaching out to shake his hand. I heard what you did in Hadiros town with that dark guild, and for the people, you know kid, have my respect. People like you're rare nowadays. I hope you never change. This surprised the guild, as many never get his respect, but we're happy it all worked out in the end. Gildarts, Urza, I have need to speak to you both. Master said, as he made his way to his office. The pair nodded and followed. Kana looked at her father with longing, hoping he would accept her. Kale placed a hand on her shoulder as she looked at him and nodded to her. She took a deep breath and calmed herself down, waiting to speak to him. The trio came back out after and stood in front of the Wild Guild. Listen up, brats. We have decided, since the next S-rank trials aren't for another 2 years, that by unanimous vote Kale Arisher has proven himself to earn the S-rank title, but he must fight both Urza and Gildarts in combat. The guild began cheering and clapping while Natsu was still knocked out. Now out of the wall, by Lucy. Makarov looked at Kale. Do agree to this? Kale looked at his 3 little girls who were beaming at him, giving them back an eye smile. He looked to the master. I accept. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you enjoyed this what if and want to see next part of it, comment down below and let me know. Also share this video with your friends. See you in the next video. Peace.